In my early to mid 50s, I was in literally the best shape of my life. And then the world shut down. And between 2020 and 2022, I gained 30 pounds. I'm 63 now. I'm going to show you exactly what I did to lose those 30 pounds. And no, it wasn't more cardio. So a day came where I looked in the mirror and literally I didn't recognize myself anymore. With 30 pounds on my relatively small frame, I looked like a different person. My face looked different, my body looked different, and I had so much fat. So I knew I had to get moving again. And here's the thing, when I started moving, my body just didn't feel right. I was used to being fit and being able to run and do all the things and lift and have lots of energy. And the first thing I did was I went out for a run and literally I felt like an elephant. Everything was so heavy. I felt like my butt was massive and I was just dragging it along and it was an awful feeling. But I also knew deep down that if I kept being consistent and kept following the principles that I had followed in my 50s when I was really, really fit, that it could all come back, even though I was older. So after that first run, I knew something had to change because I knew I might lose the things that I love to do in the outdoors. So I decided that getting consistent was probably one of the most important things that would move the needle in getting me fit again so I could do the things that I actually love. And one of those first things was strength training because these bikes are heavy. So strength training is foundational when you're over 50 in terms of keeping muscle. When we go through menopause, we naturally accelerate our muscle loss. And muscle is your bone armor. So if you fall running or walking or going down the stairs or mountain biking, you're going to protect your bones. You'll also recover a whole lot faster if you've got muscle. Muscle's also your metabolism. The more muscle you have, the more fat you're going to burn at rest. And let me tell you, I was fat. 30 pounds of fat on me was a lot. And it was the strength training that really, that and diet really kicked things into action. And we'll talk about diet in a second once I pack my bag up and we get going. So the important thing is when you're starting to lift again, to remember you can't pick up where you left off, especially if you've been away for a while and you've gained weight. In that time, I had lost a lot of muscle. It was actually really scary. There were a lot of things I couldn't lift or do that I was able to before. So I started really light and I used light dumbbells, doing the movements like squats and presses and things like that, but with very light weight just to bring back the muscle memory so that my body would start moving again the way it should so that I could safely lift the weights. In time, I regained my strength. Even in my 60s, it is possible. So the next thing I started to do after about a week or two of getting back to strength training was walking. I had stopped walking too. I don't know what happened in those couple of years when the world shut down, but Ruth shut down. So I started walking and I walked because that first run that I tried was so bad. I literally felt like I just had bags of fat attached to me that I was dragging around. It was even harder to go up and down the stairs. I would get winded and that wasn't like me. So I started walking and let me tell you, it wasn't pretty, it wasn't impressive. It was pretty slow to start out with. And eventually in time, my walks got a little bit more energetic and a little bit longer. Some days I was tired, some days I was energetic, but I made sure that I got out there. I did not start with 10,000 steps, My steps were probably back then around 4,000 to 5,000 when I started, and that was enough for me at that time. The key is to always start where you're at and work up from there. And though it might feel frustrating, it was frustrating for me because I had come from a long background of fitness and energy and all those things. Was very frustrated. And there were even times where I second guessed myself. I wondered, is it my age? Is it menopause? Is it going to be like this forever? But I refused to settle for that. You have to draw your line in the sand, what you refuse to settle for, and then just do things consistently, and things will improve. Okay, so the next thing that I did is I started focusing on my diet. And you'll notice that I didn't try to do everything at once because that would have felt really overwhelming given where I was starting from. I was starting from a place of almost, well, I can't say I felt hopeless, but almost feeling hopeless. So one thing at a time was enough for me. But when I did look at my diet, I knew that focusing on protein first was going to be the most important thing that I did. And at the time, that's the only thing I counted was how much protein I was eating in a day. I was really low on protein when I first started. My diet was horrible. I was eating too many carbs. I was drinking way too much alcohol during those years when the world shut down. And I mean, that's what caused the issue, was all of those things. But focusing on protein allowed me to get satiated with my meals, and I wasn't craving things anymore. So it made the transition to eating better easier. The other thing I did was intermittent fasting. And I know there's a lot of information out there about intermittent fasting and menopausal women and how it can actually, if done too much or too long, cause your cortisol to raise, and that goes against fat loss, right? So what I did was I would make sure that I had a 12-hour window at night where I did not eat. So when the kitchen was closed at 6 p.m. at night, the kitchen was closed and I didn't snack after. So I would eat between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So that was a 12-hour window of eating. And I would usually eat just 3 meals. I would try not to snack too much in between, if at all. If I needed a snack after a workout, I would have one, and it would be protein-based. And just following those really basic principles in the beginning allowed me to start shedding fat pretty fast. Getting rid of alcohol was a big one. Alcohol, when we consume alcohol, especially menopausal women, our body burns it first. It burns those calories first, and all the other food and carbohydrates and everything else in your body get burnt second. And the last thing to get burnt is fat. So I knew that getting alcohol would move the needle really quickly, and it did. You gotta love the rocks on this trail. Okay, let's ride. And I would say the last and most important thing that I did was make sure my mindset was right. I had to stop thinking that I had limitations. I couldn't do things anymore. I was too old. I was in my 60s. I had to stop comparing myself to all the other 60-year-olds around me and believe that I could be everything I wanted to be, even though my age defied it. And the minute I started thinking that way, the minute getting back to exercising, eating right, not drinking, getting enough sleep, making sure I take my supplements, all became so much easier because I was no longer fighting an identity that told me I couldn't do it anymore. One of the things that I love to do when I'm working with my clients is to find out what their dream is. What do they really want to do in terms of activity? And it's been really interesting because more often than not, women in their 50s and 60s want to be able to run again. They remember running as a kid and how freeing that can be and how that feels, but they have some limiting beliefs on ever being able to pick their feet up off the ground and run again. So we start small, just the way I started small to get myself back. We start by walking, and then we start by taking 10 little running steps at a time and then walking. And before long, they're running 20 steps. And then it becomes a mindset thing where they now believe they can, so they do. So those were the things that I did to get myself back from where I was, 30 pounds overweight, to now mountain biking and hiking and running and lifting and doing all the things I really love to do, even at 63 years old. So if you are finding yourself stuck, wondering what to do next, I did a video that's a lot more in depth than this on the specific items that I did to lose those 30 pounds. You can find the link above. I think it'll really help you out. And drop in the comments what you're working on. What's your dream? Do you want to be able to run again or bike again or chase your grandkids again? What's the one thing that you want to be able to do that maybe you are afraid to start doing now? I'd love to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Went in easier the first time. Have a beautiful day.